It had been 3 years since Eleanor Hart packed up her city apartment, kissed the glass skyline goodbye, and moved to the forgotten town of Deadwood Valley. She was the type of woman who used to wear heels and red lipstick to parent-teacher conferences, a determined, capable teacher who once taught Shakespeare to teenagers more interested in TikTok than tragedy. But here, in this bone-dry stretch of nowhere, she taught 7 grades in one class and lived in a creaking cottage beside the woods. Eleanor thought she had come here to escape the noise of her past, a controlling ex-fiancé, a toxic work culture, and a heart that had broken once too often. She had come for peace. She got silence. Too much of it. It was the kind of silence that scraped the bones. The kind that made her talk to her tea kettle and name the crows who visited her porch rail. She had resigned herself to this slow, gray solitude, not realizing the storm wasn't over, it was only waiting to arrive on horseback. That storm came in the form of a man. He arrived in the middle of the worst thunderstorm the valley had seen in a decade. She remembered the way the thunder cracked, shaking the little schoolhouse like a toy. She had stayed late that night grading papers and lost track of time, caught in the downpour. Her ancient truck refused to start, coughing out one last sigh of defeat. Cursing, soaked, shivering, she began the long muddy walk home when a horse snorted behind her. She turned and saw a silhouette that seemed to blot out the sky, a man, tall as a nightmare, broader than any cowboy had a right to be, with a dark hat pulled low and a long oilskin coat that shimmered in the rain. His voice cut through the storm, low and rough like whiskey soaked in gravel. "You shouldn't be walkin' alone, little one." She blinked, caught between fear and fury. "Excuse me," she said. "Ain't safe," he growled. "Not for you. Not tonight." She stared at him, speechless, as he slid off the horse in one fluid motion. Up close, he was bigger than life, easily 6'7", his shoulders massive, his chest broad beneath the soaked fabric. He didn't smile. Didn't offer his name. Just extended a gloved hand. "I'll take you home." Against every better instinct, she accepted. She told herself it was just a ride. Just a neighbor being neighborly. But the way he lifted her onto the saddle, one hand on her waist, the way he rode pressed against her back, one strong arm holding the reins and the other casually, possessively around her middle, it was nothing neighborly. It was a claim. It was a promise. It was danger. When they arrived at her cottage, she expected him to ride off into the storm. Instead, he tied the horse to her porch post and followed her up the steps without a word. She turned, bristling. "You can't just barge in here like, I ain't leavin' you alone in this storm," he said. "There are things out here you don't understand." She should have protested. She should have slammed the door. But the truth was, she didn't want to be alone anymore. And something in his voice, a dark, protective tone she didn't understand, calmed her like a lullaby wrapped in thunder. Inside, he hung his coat by the door. And that's when she saw it. Scars. Dozens of them. Jagged, white trails across sun-darkened skin. His shirt clung to his muscles, and she caught herself staring at the way they moved when he ran a hand through his dripping hair. "What's your name?" she asked, just above a whisper. He turned to her, eyes like molten gold beneath dark brows. "Call me Colt." Colt. Of course his name was Colt. Everything about him screamed untamed. He didn't sit, didn't make himself comfortable. He prowled. Examined her bookshelf. Touched the wood grain of her furniture like a man who missed the feel of home. When he finally turned back to her, his eyes weren't on her face, they were on her hands. She realized she was shaking. And then he stepped close, cupping them in his massive, calloused palms. "You're lonely," he said quietly. Not a question. A fact. She opened her mouth to deny it, but it caught in her throat. Because he was right. She was tired of being strong. Tired of holding it together. Tired of the ache that never left. That night, he didn't kiss her. Didn't touch her beyond that one moment. He sat by her fireplace, watched the flames, said little. She made tea. He drank it silently. At midnight, when the rain turned to wind, he stood. "I'll be back tomorrow," he said. "Why?" she asked, heart pounding. He leaned down then, lips close to her ear. "Because I'm claimin' you, little one." His voice was a promise wrapped in gravel and heat. You just don't know it yet. Then he was gone. The next morning, he returned. Every day after that, Colt came. Sometimes with supplies, sometimes with fresh eggs, sometimes with a bundle of wildflowers or strange, beautiful stones from the canyon. He never asked for anything. Never crossed a line. But his presence filled the room like smoke, heavy, impossible to ignore. He fixed her fence. Sharpened her axe. Carried in firewood with such effortless strength that she had to retreat into the kitchen just to catch her breath. The townspeople noticed. Whispers grew. The cowboys got his eye on the new teacher, they said. You be careful with that one, the old storekeeper warned. He's dangerous. Been away a long time. Ain't right in the head, some say. But Eleanor didn't feel fear. She felt curiosity. Longing. Heat. And something deeper, something terrifying and holy. Like she was being hunted not by a man but by a force of nature. A bear. A storm. A ghost. One night, as autumn leaves tumbled like fire from the trees, he didn't come. The silence in her cottage was suffocating. She waited. Paced. Looked out the window every hour. At midnight, she stepped outside, heart pounding. The wind howled through the trees. And then, hoofbeats. He emerged from the dark like a vision, eyes blazing. But something was wrong. He was bleeding. She ran to him, hands frantic on his arms. What happened? She gasped. He didn't answer. Just grabbed her waist, held her tightly, breathing hard. They're watching me, he whispered. Who? She asked. He looked into her eyes, and for the first time, he looked afraid. I need you to trust me, little one, he said. Even when nothing makes sense. Even when the whole damn world says run. Don't. Promise me. And she did. That night, he stayed. That night, she learned how it felt to be truly held. To be seen. To be claimed. Eleanor had never known a man like Colt. In the days that followed his bloody return, something shifted between them. He stayed longer, spoke less, and watched her with a gaze that held more than heat, it held history. Secrets. Pain. She didn't press, though every instinct in her begged to know more. Who was watching him? What had scarred his body like that? What kind of life had carved a man into this shape, part protector, part predator? But instead of asking, she offered him comfort in the only way she knew how, warmth, food, silence, and her steady presence. Her little cottage became a sanctuary for them both. Sometimes he stayed the night, always in the chair by the fire. Eleanor would wake up in the dark hours and see him there, eyes glowing in the shadows, still as a statue but wide awake. As if sleep was something he couldn't afford. Or no longer trusted. One morning, she found him outside her window at dawn, shirtless, swinging an axe with terrifying grace. The sun kissed the golden scars across his back and arms, and she stood there, heart racing, as she realized how deeply this man unsettled her. Not because he scared her, but because he cracked her open in places she had buried long ago. She had loved before, but it had never felt like this. Not primal. Not cosmic. Not like the earth had tilted when he entered her life. Then, one Sunday, the silence shattered. Colt had gone out at sunrise, said he had things to handle, and she'd spent the day restlessly pacing her home. As the sun dipped low, she heard tires on gravel, an unfamiliar sound. A black SUV pulled up outside her gate. Men in suits stepped out. Not local. Not friendly. Their eyes were sharp. Military. They knocked without waiting. Eleanor opened the door, spine straight. "Can I help you?" she asked. The one in front, tall, clean-cut, eyes like ice, flashed a badge that looked government but didn't name an agency. "We're looking for a man. Goes by Colt. We know he's been seen around here. You've had visitors, haven't you, ma'am?" Her pulse spiked. She forced herself to smile. "I'm a teacher. I have a lot of visitors. Children. Parents. Deputy Clyde brings my groceries." The men didn't smile back. This isn't a joke. He's dangerous. She frowned. You mean Colt? He's never hurt anyone. The men stepped closer. He's not what you think. He's not even supposed to exist. That phrase chilled her blood. What are you talking about? She whispered. He glanced at his men, then leaned closer. You need to be careful, Miss Hart. Some shadows are darker than others. If you see him again, run. And just like that, they were gone. Dust rising behind their tires, leaving her stunned and shaken on the porch. Colt returned late that night. His face was hard, closed off. She told him about the visit. His jaw tensed. Government dogs, he muttered. They're sniffing again. Eleanor crossed her arms. You want to tell me what the hell is going on now? For a long time, he said nothing. Then, with a sigh that seemed to drag up ghosts, he sat down. You deserve the truth, little one. But you ain't gonna like it. And then he told her. He wasn't just a cowboy. Wasn't just a drifter. Colt had once been part of a covert military experiment, an off-the-books black project meant to create enhanced soldiers. Superhuman reflexes. Regenerative cells. Strength beyond biology. A weapon with a conscience. He had volunteered after his brother died in the war, thinking he'd become a better protector. Instead, they turned him into something other. A predator in a man's body. He broke free after a mission went wrong, too many civilians, too much blood. He refused to follow orders, refused to kill. So they hunted him. Branded him rogue. A threat. A monster. When Eleanor looked at him after that story, he flinched. But she didn't retreat. Instead, she stepped closer, touched his scarred cheek. You're not a monster, she said. You're a man who fought to stay human. That's the bravest thing I've ever heard. For the first time, something broke in him. A crack in the armor. He pulled her into his arms like she was the only soft thing left in a cruel world. And that night, for the first time, he didn't sleep by the fire. He took her hand and led her to the bed. And there, beneath the low moonlight, he made good on his promise. I'm claimin' you tonight, little one, he growled, voice low, raw with need. No more waitin'. No more watchin'. You're mine. She didn't resist. Couldn't. Because she was his, had been from the moment he stepped out of the rain. Their bodies found rhythm like old songs rediscovered, like stars colliding. He was all heat and strength and reverence, as if worshipping the very soul of her. She had never felt so wanted. So alive. So utterly consumed. And afterward, when she lay tangled in his arms, breathless and boneless, she whispered, "What now?" He kissed her temple. "Now we fight." Because the men in suits were coming back. And this time, they wouldn't knock. Over the next week, they prepared. Colt trained her in ways she'd never imagined, teaching her how to hold a weapon, how to read terrain, how to move without sound. He buried caches in the woods, set up tripwires, coded walkie-talkies. Eleanor followed him through every lesson, her love hardening into resolve. She would not lose him. Not to men who saw him as a threat instead of a soul. And when the day came, when the SUVs returned, engines low, weapons drawn, she was ready. They didn't expect her to fight back. They didn't expect traps. They didn't expect the giant cowboy to emerge from the forest like death itself, eyes blazing gold, mouth set in a snarl. It wasn't a slaughter, it was a warning. He spared them. But he made it clear, come again, and you won't leave breathing. That night, as they burned the documents left behind, Eleanor stood beside him in the dark, watching the fire consume the last of the old world. What now? She asked again. He pulled her close. Now we build something better. You and me. No more runnin'. No more hidin'. Just us. She looked up at him, into eyes that had once known nothing but war, and saw peace blooming there, raw, fragile, real. She smiled. Then I'm yours, she whispered. Always. And when he kissed her, deep, claiming, final, she knew the truth. She hadn't just been saved by a man. She had been chosen by a legend. A legend with a cowboy hat and a haunted heart. and she would follow him into fire, storm, and beyond. Forever.